Manning here. Welcome to a special edition of the Garden Report. Not often we do previews of games here, but on this Saturday afternoon, the
Yeah, this
first of
one's
many
necessary. Yeah.
returns coming over the next month here uh, from that 2022 finals run. And this one, the biggest of them all, long anticipated return of Ime Udoka after his suspension and firing from the Celtics, which, as I saw on Twitter yesterday, Josue, was 477 days ago now, which is crazy to
Wow.
think about.
Time
Uh,
flies. Well, when it was official, right? When it was made official.
when they suspended him for the first time for
Oh,
the
when they
year.
suspended. Oh, okay, gotcha. I thought you meant when they officially relieved. When he was no longer suspended, he was
Yeah.
officially gone.
That
Yeah.
that was last February, and of course, not a ton from Ime. He did speak to ESPN. Mark Spears, I think, wrote that story. Talked to Marcus Smart as well. So a few comments from him ahead of this one, and as well as from Joe Mazzulla in Milwaukee. We'll play that clip as well as Udoka's brief remarks on the return coming up tonight when he was in Detroit last night. Rockets squeaked out a win over the Pistons and coming to tonight about 500, much better than they've been, Josue. And Ime's clearly going to be a coach of the year candidate if he gets that team into the playoffs, given how the last 2 years went here. But it's going to be an interesting night here in Boston. We debated on the Garden Report after the Bucks game whether he'll get booed, whether he'll get cheered. Jimmy was adamant that he deserves to be booed. I think it's pretty obvious that he's going to be cheered given what he accomplished here in that year. John said he would do neither and just sit on the fence. So, what
He
are
was
you
just sitting one.
expecting? What are you expecting tonight? I guess first and foremost from the fans, from the crowd tonight. I guess fans can weigh in the chat here what they're going to do.
I think it's going to be split. I don't know if it'll be 50-50. It'll be hard to gauge if it's like a 70-30 type. And when I say 70-30, I mean 70% more boos than cheers. But I don't know. I mean, if I was a betting man, I'd probably say it's going to be about 50-50, I think. But it'll be hard to tell. I mean, it's one of those things where like the boos are going to obviously, like just to shut up the cheering, and then it's gonna go up a notch, I think. So then it's gonna seem like he got flat out booed, but I think you're gonna hear people cheering because of one of two things. One, the Celtics have the best record in the NBA, or one of, right, or they've been that team all season long, so everything is good. If this team was failing, if they weren't meeting expectations, then absolutely 90 or 100% boos. Like, this is your fault. How dare you? Like, look at what you did. But because the team is successful, with Joe Mazzulla, going off of what happened last year, I think there is some of that. Hey, they could have got it done last year, and that's why you'll hear some of those boos. However, because the team is successful right now, I think you'll hear some cheers.
So that was Jimmy's take that his suspension, his actions screwed up last year so much. Prime opportunity to get back to the finals and potentially win, build on that finals run. That's why Jimmy would boo him. I still look at it as the average fan, I think, doesn't fully know what Ime did, whether he deserved it. I've talked to a lot of fans who have been like, coming from the perspective, at least early on after that suspension, that maybe it was an overreaction firing him, especially, during the struggles of last year and the inconsistency of last year. I think a lot of fans felt that way. You're right, though. Given Joe's success this year, the team's steady play, 29-9, that's not as much of a take. In fact, we posted his remarks last night, and the overwhelming sentiment in the comments was, wow, glad he's gone, blah, 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 blah. So you know how it is for the fans. It's very fleeting, and this isn't as big of a story as it was clearly at points last year where, there were reports that the team never got over his suspension. And, you had players talking throughout the year, particularly Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, about how difficult the whole year had been without him there. And now I think the team's a lot more comfortable with Joe, finding success. A new group, obviously. Smart's gone, Grant's gone, and a whole assistant coaching staff turnover here as well. So most of those Ime Udoka assistants are gone at this point. So it's a much different circumstance here, much different environment, I'm sure, in the arena. I'm, as I said, expecting mostly cheers. I think they're going to just acknowledge him bringing them to the finals, what the players and coaches have all said. were valuable lessons learned under him, and no ill will from any of the players toward him. Like, it feels like the whole team still has good relationship with him. I'm sure most people feel like he deserves a second chance in Houston, and for whatever reason, it just couldn't work in Boston.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of this, right? I feel like a lot of people have trouble holding judgment because we don't know all the facts. We don't know exactly what transpired. But then you have other people like Jimmy, and it's not a knock on Jimmy because it's fair to some degree. It's a coach who got himself fired, as Jimmy put it a couple of nights ago. And that's true. I mean, but then again, we don't know if it was fair, And I think given the fact that he was given a second chance, well, not immediately, right? We have to remember that. And I'm glad that Mark Spears mentioned that in his article that the Brooklyn Nets were, it seemed like all the signs were pointing in that direction where he was gonna go to Brooklyn and become their new head coach. However, the backlash I felt like really scared Brooklyn, and the backlash from women's rights activists, saying that what happened and all this stuff. Well, I don't know if women's rights activists, I shouldn't say that, but it was just backlash in general that it would not be a good idea for them to bring in someone like Ime. And then Houston went out there and said, you know what, we'll take him. And I think that's what really helped people understand that, okay, well, maybe we don't know exactly what happened here, but if Houston's willing to give him a second chance here, maybe Boston just cut their losses and decides to move on too quickly. Was that a mistake? I mean, honestly, I don't think so. I think they did the right thing in the fact that if you're going to make a decision like that, you do it right away. You don't wait it out and go throughout the season with investigation, with everything out the way it played out. But this thing was messy, Bobby. And I feel like because of that, we'll never know all the facts right away. It'll take time, and who knows? Maybe it'll take a tell-all book or something for us to know exactly what happened and what went down that led to Ime losing his job.
What do you think Ime's demeanor is going to be tonight? Because in every moment we've heard from, right from the start, honestly, with the statement after the suspension, he sounded conciliatory, accepted the punishment, took responsibility for what he did. In his introductory conference in Houston, he talked about getting counseling, working on redeeming his relationship with his son, and saying that, I always stress for these players to take accountability, so I have to do that myself. And clearly had a fight to some degree to get back in the league. Brooklyn wanted to hire him, backed off. And then Houston, I'm sure he had to sell himself to some degree. And the league certainly took a look at this too and said, all right, he's good to come back. What are you expecting his demeanor to be? We know how he is. You saw him getting ejected, scrapping with LeBron.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's a hard-nosed personality. He's got some pride, so I'm sure he's going to be coming into Boston wanting to beat his old team, that suspended and fired him here. And I don't think he's going to reflect that in his comments necessarily pregame. I'm sure it's going to be a lot of love and respect for everybody who's here, who he coached, avoiding questions about the details, as we probably expect at this point, and just accepting responsibility and probably showing some regret for not being able to hang on to this golden opportunity he had here as coach, given the team that he had. And you obviously see where he is now. It's going to be a much longer road back to competing for a championship. But I think deep down, he's going to be wanting to score this win over his former team today.
Oh yeah, no question. I think the team's going to feel that way as well. Like they want to get one for coach for sure. And on the second half of back-to-back, coming off that the first end, where they really had to fight to fend off the Detroit Pistons last night. It'll be interesting to see what they look like deep in the second half, considering a lot of those starters played over 30 minutes. And Ime going into this game, obviously he's going to have that feeling in his heart. But I in terms of his demeanor and what he's going to be like towards us, I think it'll be stoic. I don't think he's going to be looking back at the great times and reflecting off of the great memories of what happened in that run to the NBA Finals. I think he's moving forward, obviously, and he doesn't want to think back about what happened. He doesn't want to answer questions about, obviously, the situation that led to him getting fired. So I just expect him saying a lot of what we heard last night. Just saying, hey, it's. I'm not much of a sentimental guy. I'm not here to dwell on the past. I'm looking forward. So I expect him to respond to any question like that with the same demeanor.
And here he is last night after that win over Detroit, asked about coming to Boston tonight.
Tomorrow feel like a different type of game for you? No,
going back
not
there?
really. Not quite, to be honest. I look at one at a time and was not thinking ahead of Detroit at all tonight. And for me, it's, you go back to somewhere he had some success, but overall, I'd say I'm not too sentimental of a person and won't get caught up in anything like that.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Well, he says that, but deep down inside, he must be thinking, man, like what could have been. But I don't think that's something he's thinking about all the time. But going back to TD Garden, I just think naturally you have to dwell on the past and think, man, maybe we win a championship last year.
That's what I'm most curious about. That's probably what I'm going to ask.
But no way he's gonna let us into that that part of his mind. Like, come on. And rightfully so. He's a head coach. If I was a player on the Houston Rockets, I'd be like, really, coach? These guys got rid of you. Why are you dwelling on the past? And why are you talking about the incredible Eastern Conference Finals in 2022? Like, where's your focus at?
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm most curious about. Obviously, are there any regrets he has, way he would have handled things differently, and to some degree, his feelings toward the organization. Did he feel like he was treated fairly in that moment? And he did. He has answered that question to some degree. So it's more probably about how he looks back on it. How he would have changed things if he could, just to hold on to this opportunity he had here. And from your standpoint, Josue, what are you most curious to hear him answer?
He's not going to, but I would love to hear him talk about just not that if they did they win the did they get to the NBA Finals if he's the head coach, but just the strides that he's seen through Tatum and Brown. And I think he'll answer questions like that. I shouldn't say that. I just feel like he's not going to give us that answer that we want, in the sense of that series that happened, that played out the way it did, being down 3-0. Like, would you have done that? Well, how would you approach that? That type of stuff he's never going to answer. But honestly, I'm just looking forward to see how he talks about just the transition going into the Houston Rockets situation compared to the situation he had here. And it'll be interesting to see how he answers that. And of course, the way he tries to dodge the tough questions, because he will get a few of those tonight. But again, I don't expect him to really open up or share anything really, juicy. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think he's going to be up there talking about the great times or talking about the hard times when he was unsure about his NBA coaching career or his future.
This was Marcus Smart to Mark Spears talking about Ime. Obviously, Smart probably as impacted as anyone by the suspension that year. Said Ime's great. Obviously, under the circumstances, we didn't get to give it another run, and it really showed. He said, for somebody as a first-year head coach to come in and take the team that he had with Boston, not only the finals, but halfway through the season, be right at 500, and then take the team to the finals, that's not really heard of too often. And we got to give him credit right there. We built a special relationship. Ime played as a former player. He understands a lot of things we go through as players. That connection only gets stronger when you can talk to somebody in control as a coach, and somebody that's been out there and understands what you're going through. Definitely put a dent in us, Smart said. We were on a high wave making it there, yet coming up short. We were expecting to get a full season under Udoka. We can do this again, and we can really get into it, and we just didn't get that chance. And when you get a taste of something, it's hard not to want it. And then when you don't get it anymore, it's like, dang, what happened? What could have happened? What could we do? It definitely put a dent in us. But the beauty is for professionals go out there and play. Unfortunately, it happened, but we definitely learned a lot from Ime. And that was my sentiment this morning. I wrote about all that for Celtics blog this morning. I think the biggest reason you're going to hear cheers tonight is it's clear what impact he had on this team in a short amount of time. And, we both covered that year, Josue, between the pressers, his grilling comments at times, and that culture he built of collective accountability where anyone could call each other out. And he certainly set the tone with that often. Smart, too, early in the season, calling out the Jays, the pressure he put on those guys to perform and grow and lead. There was just no BS with him, and I loved it. It was exactly what they needed. I thought there were a lot of things to love about him as a coach. the experience, the relationships he had with these guys. I mean, you look at Derek White coming in that year, and it's like, oh, our deadline edition played for you, came up under you, and you already have that relationship with that guy, even from Team USA coaching him right off the bat. And Ime played in all these different spots, won a championship, came up under Greg Popovich. Like, everything about it felt perfect for what this team needed. And obviously Brad Stevens looked up to what Popovich built there as a system that spread around the league in his coaching days. So that's what I think people are going to appreciate, is the way he instilled that here, because we still see it Josue. They still defend similar to how they did under him. You're still seeing Tatum and Brown try to make those strides as playmakers. That's something that Ime started. And it's not quite that a level of accountability that we saw under him here under Joe, but I'm sure internally there's still some of that. That's probably the biggest missing piece we're still seeing from his time here. But elsewhere, at least on the court with what they do, I still think there's a ton that they pull from what Ime taught them.
Yeah, they got that switcher mentality, man. I feel like he instilled that, and they're going to have that in them forever. I feel like no matter what, because I just think that he got the best out of these guys on that end of the floor, and the proof was the record. Obviously, the turnaround. I mean, they went from under 500 team to finishing with above 50 wins that season. Like, that incredible second half of the year. I'm not quite sure Tatum and Brown and Smart and all those guys knew that they even had that in them. I don't think they knew that was even possible. And they just rode that momentum through the playoffs, and they really dialed in. They really believed in him. And I think that's why he was at Marcus Smart's wedding over the summer. That's why guys are always he'll be revered as that guy who not only turned their season around, but I think changed their mentality in the way that they approach the game. So I think a lot of that, it's still with them. And I think that's why, yeah, like you said, people in the crowd, they should cheer for him, because he sort of expedited the process, if you will, right? The belief that they can make it to the NBA Finals, getting there. And like Marcus Smart said, giving them that taste that it's essentially changed Marcus, it changed Tatum, it changed Jalen in a big way, in the way that they see the game. So I think that you have to applaud Ime for doing that, because that one season did make a difference. That 1 year changed everything. And then at the same time, yeah, you look at what Marcus said about last season, and it's like that's a tough way to start the year. It's literally right before media day, you find out that your head coach is not going to be there, the guy who got you to the NBA Finals, and you want to have a whole season of that mentality, that approach, the way everything changed after Christmas, going into a brand new season, and we'll always wonder what if.
It was shocking. I remember that. I think it was late that night that we got the Woj tweet, and I think
Max called me that night, man. We were all like, "What's going on? What did he do?" Crazy.
Yeah, I think the most shocking thing about it, beyond it becoming a bit of a salacious celebrity story too, given Nia Long's involvement and all that.
TMZ. Once TMZ gets involved, right?
It didn't seem like he would be the one to do this, based on how we came to know him that year. You know what I mean? Just the accountability and just how hard he was on everybody else to be disciplined, and who he was as the coach of that team. You didn't think that he'd be the one that would put himself in that position to miss time. Yeah, it's obviously not a comparison, but he was one of the few coaches that year, his first season, that didn't catch COVID. Remember, like, so many different coaches were going down with COVID. He never did. And he talked a lot that year about how, like, he doesn't want to be falling out of the position he's in there atop the team. And if he does, he's got everything lined up for the other coaches to take over. And I just remember how methodical he was about making sure that didn't disrupt the team. And in the end,
so he remained healthy, Bobby, but he broke another kind of rule, huh?
Okay. Right. So yeah. I don't know if he felt like it was something he could get away with, or didn't see the severity of it. Or
yeah, I think that's where maybe he didn't quite. And again, we don't know the facts here. We're just sort of assuming and guessing here based off of what was reported and what we were being told, right? I wonder if he knew that it would get this. It would be this bad, like the ramification that it would lead to him losing his job. Is it something that was set in stone? Something that he thought that I should say set in stone. Was it something that he was given chances on? We don't know. I mean, maybe it's something that he was told more than once, or was it just a one-off? We don't know. I mean, that's a lot of the details in the part of the story that we have to we just go off of what we've been told. So yeah, I mean, you wonder what if.
Yes, and my favorite memory of him, obviously, that year was after 18 and 21, and it was probably my most memorable Garden Report we've done, was just the craziness after that RJ Barrett game winner against the Knicks, 25-point
Oh
meltdown.
man, as Tatum said, that crushed them. That was the most defeating loss. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that was a wake-up call for the team too, right? I mean, they had so many bad losses that year. Me and you were joking about it when they got booed against the Pistons a week or two ago for the first time this year. It was like that was a constant that season early on when they were blowing leads left and right. It was just constant boos at TD Garden, and that was a wake-up call. The Knicks lost. But I remember Ime coming right out, and it was pretty divisive at the time among fans. Remember Josue, how publicly he would criticize the team? And after this game, he comes down right away in New York and is like, we need to build some mental toughness. This same thing keeps happening over and over again. Someone's got to step up and stop this because we just keep spiraling in these spots. And he just went on this tirade against the team. And people didn't like it. I think they thought he didn't have the answers himself. So he was just coming out and blasting people after every game. And that was the only thing he could do as a coach. But I think it was the effective way to get to this group, right? They grew off this. And coming into the year, the biggest reason I defended him during that time was that he said the players asked him to coach them hard. And that's what he did. And it wasn't pretty. And it probably got divisive at times over it. But it was effective in the end. I think, they end up winning 22 or 25 over that stretch where Robert Williams is going crazy and they have the best defense in the league. It took time for him to implement his vision, and the team probably could have split during the struggles early on. Maybe he could have taken the blame for that if the team acted more aggressively against their start and looked in a different direction. But they gave him a little bit of time there to right the ship, and that playoff run was just incredible when you think people worried about the Nets, and then he goes out there and sweeps them. People worried about the Bucks. They go down 2-3. I thought the series was over. They come back and win. And then, obviously, the grueling 7 games against Miami, they escaped from there. Some people are going to say he probably could have done a better job in the finals, the drop on Curry and all that kind of stuff. But you look at that year and where they were the year before, the disaster 2021, to be in the finals the next year is just still a startling success. I mean, when we sat there after that Knicks loss, Josue, would you ever in your wildest dreams have said this team's going to be in the finals this spring? Like, it was incomprehensible.
Eastern Conference Finals, I was like, they still got the shot. But finals, I wasn't quite sure, to be honest with you. But I did know one thing, though. Splitting the Jays wasn't it. That wasn't the answer. Because I was like, it's too soon. You got to see this thing through. And especially with the head coach who's only halfway through his first season. I mean, let's not slam the panic button, but I can understand why Celtics fans felt that way. You're wondering if the Celtics made the right choice in giving him, the power and giving him the head coaching position. But I always say a head coach needs more than up until that point. And even though they were under 500, you wonder what kind of turn they were going to make. But that tough love, that type of accountability, holding your guys accountable, especially the stars, I just think went such a long way with these guys, especially because he wasn't necessarily brand new, right, to these guys. They had somewhat of a relationship from, Team USA, and he was a coach there, and the reputation and all that. Like, we always joked about how I can't think of another head coach going into his first year with just rave reviews. Like, there wasn't one person that you could find to say a mediocre thing about this guy. Everything was 10 stars or whatever, 5 stars across the board approval rating. And I think a lot of that helped Tatum and Smart and Brown for them to say, okay, let's just trust this guy. He wants to be tough with us. He wants to go in front of the media and put us on blast, and let's show him what we're made of. And I think that's what really brought these guys together. Obviously, it took that maturity. It took guys like those three who had been to the Eastern Conference Finals before that, who had taken their lumps, to be mature enough to say, okay, let's ride with this guy. Let's continue to believe in him. And that's why it's no question why they all still maintain a relationship, considering what happened and the success that they had. And I just think that translated as well on the personal level. And that's why these guys are still friends and they still stay in touch.
I want to see if this works too here. I got this clip from Tatum last year, which I thought was pretty telling.
Oh, yeah, this is great.
Let's see if you can hear this.
Situation for everybody involved. And it's somebody that, I've talked to throughout the season, just periodically just reaching out. Because without, whatever happened, and that's, doesn't have anything to do with me. But, I can't take away the relationship that me and him had and the impact that he had on me in that one season. I love Coach K. I love Brad. I love Joe. I love all those guys. But, just a different kind of relationship I had with Ime, and probably like my most favorite coach I've had, and that's not a knock on anybody. I got a great relationship with Joe. I love everything he's doing. I'm extremely happy for him. Brad, kind of helped me navigate the NBA. I was 19, and he kind of helped watch me grow and put me in the right spots. So I have a different perspective and respect for each coach I've had, just different times in my life.
Yeah, man, they're friends. It's beyond the basketball court for sure. I mean, that says it all right there. Tatum at All-Star Weekend and talking about their relationship. I just think it does transcend basketball, and it's incredible. But at the same time, you have to credit the Celtics as well for putting someone like Joe Mazzulla in that situation where it's like, okay, what are we going to do here? Like we have to put someone that obviously is familiar with these guys, knows the system, can take on the huge toll that it takes to be an NBA head coach, and especially at his age. And look, to his credit, he's done his best. Last year was a lot to learn from, and I think this year we've seen that evolution from year one to year two in a great way. And you credit Stevens for filling out that coaching staff as well. But yeah, it's just it's unfortunate that this Ime and Tatum, what could have been, right? That classic type of superstar head coach relationship blossom on the court the way it is still going, off the court. And to me, Tatum as well, like you got to remember, man, I always say he's kind of like an old soul, man. I can just see him as someone that can just befriend someone like that so quickly and have so much respect for Ime, even though they're probably about 15 years apart. He just seems like someone that always just hung out with the older guys and is always shows so much respect to his elders and the guys that came before him, especially former players. Ime is a former player and a well-respected guy in the basketball world.
Yes, and that was what I loved about covering him. And through the couple of years we covered the team together here, Josue, he's by far my favorite person I've covered with the team, just because he had so much perspective. He could talk about Kawhi, he could talk about Popovich, he could talk about USA and the international game and all this different stuff that he experienced during his career, going through injuries. That's something he did. Like, he had an answer for everything, right? And Joe, I love Joe. Joe's been much better to cover this year by far, and I think he's gone above and beyond in really accommodating us this year. But the one thing that does frustrate me about covering him is that he didn't play in the league. So you'll ask him about this and that and that and this, and he'll just say, I don't know, because he doesn't have that perspective. And
he says that about a lot of stuff. But
yeah, you know what I mean? Though, because like you'll look for different perspective or even like takes on things. Like, we'll be like, oh, should things be this way? Or, should they change this about the game? What do you think about this? And he just doesn't have opinions on that stuff because it either doesn't matter to him or he doesn't know. So that's what I really loved about covering Ime, is that you always had some interesting perspective on stuff like that. Like, one of my favorite stories he told in his time here was that he had the same conversation with Tatum that he did with Kawhi, and that these opponents shouldn't be your friends. These aren't your buddies. You got to go out there and try to kill them on the court. Like, that's got to be your mentality when you step out there, even if you are friends with these guys off the court. And he said that's something that he got through to Kawhi and was still trying to get through to Tatum around the time that he was coaching him there. And it's just like, that's perfect, right? If you're Tatum, you want to be like Kawhi, you want to be that champion, you want to be one of the stars of the league. Well, here's the guy who coached Kawhi and helped get him where he was in San Antonio, telling you exactly how he did it and doing the same thing with you. Like, it was
Right.
perfect.
And
And
it's such a great comparison too, right, Bobby? Because
yeah,
Kawhi's not the guy who's going to get in your face. He's not going to get in Tony Parker's face. Like, guys, we need to do this. We need to do
right.
that. The same type of criticism that Tatum receives as a leader, and not being as demonstrative as others are. As maybe a Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan, the guys that came before him. So yeah, it was great to have that connection with someone that obviously coached Kawhi Leonard and was such a close, someone that saw it firsthand for sure.
Yeah, and here was the Globe caught up with Damon Stoudemire just to wrap it here and preview what we might hear tonight, which is Stoudemire's telling Adam Himmelsbach that he's not speaking for Ime, but he would say the regret is probably what could have been because we had something special going. Stoudemire, of course, at Georgia Tech now. More than anything, it's basketball related. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears were put into the 2023 season. We went to the finals and had a team coming back where we tweaked it a little bit and we looked every bit the part. So that would be the regret. Anybody could feel that, not being able to see that situation through. It was such a good opportunity. You got young stars, great role players. Looking back on it, that has to go through his mind a lot. The challenge initially was getting over the shock about the suspension. That was the first thing. Then the second thing was being so late with everything happening, with Joe being thrust in at that time. He didn't have the opportunity to put a stamp on the team. There might have been other things he wanted to do, but we kept everything the same because it was so late in the game. You tweak a couple of things here or there, but that was a challenge. And again, that's what I'm looking forward to tonight. And you think about it, Josue, everyone loves where the roster's at now, right? And they got a little lucky getting Holiday, and the Porzingis thing went better than anybody could have imagined. But if Ime's back and they have another finals run that next year, maybe they break through and win the championship. Marcus Smart's still here and Grant's still here.
I thought you were going to say Marcus Smart thinks that. I'm like, yeah, he does. I think he does.
Right. Like, they could have gotten it done with that group. And as great as it'll be for fans to see this team get it done, and I think fans are starting to fall in love with this team, people want to see Smart, Tatum, Brown, Horford, Grant, that group win it. And they were so close, right? And that's another regret, too, is not getting it done in 2022. And this is what we said at the time. Obviously, we didn't anticipate Udoka getting fired and those guys getting traded and everything, but it's never promised that you're going to be back. And even as good as this team's doing this year, it's not certain that they're going to be back. Things could happen. And that's still what you're thinking about today.
Right. But I don't know. I'll go on a limb and say, well, it's not even going on a limb, but I'll certainly say they get to the NBA Finals with Ime, but I don't know if they win it. Like, that Denver Nuggets team, like, they were just on a journey, like they were going to win no matter what. Maybe that series goes to max, but I don't know. I still like the Denver Nuggets' chances. So I'll never look back at that season and say, man, that team wins a championship if it was Ime instead of Joe. But what I always will look back on is the transition that it made. Going down 3-0 in the Eastern Conference Finals, making the comeback that they did. Yeah, you fell short, but you just saw a team really learn from that experience in a big way, and especially the way the team from the front office perspective, what Brad Stevens did, and not only bringing back or keeping this core intact, minus Marcus Smart, but you use these, you maximize what you had to put together, not even arguably the best starting five in the NBA, like even on paper and when the season started, 2 months, 3 months into it, it's not even up for debate. So I think you credit Brad for maximizing what he did and putting this team together and reopening this window with Tatum and Brown obviously in the middle of it.
Yeah, we were there against Minnesota the other night. That was the first time it felt like it's on again. Like, everybody believes in this team.
Remember this too, man. Like, if Joe Mazzulla, like, if this whole thing just didn't work out last season, or let's say they didn't even make the Eastern Conference Finals and he's back for year 2, and people are unsure about him, or imagine if during the offseason they consider bringing another coach, like that would have really complicated things. It would have really changed the vibe in the locker room, and it would have made things harder for these guys to find that continuity. And I think Brad Stevens, like, to make the decision he made, it wasn't an easy one, but he did it. And I think he made the right one with Mazzulla. I really do.
Absolutely. And the changes going into this year. I mean, that was an extremely difficult situation as the president of the team, as the guy who hired Udoka to pull off and take accountability himself for everything that went down. And obviously, one thing Udoka's at fault for here, and certainly the Celtics too, take a little bit of blame, is just the brutal aftermath of the suspension. There was just a lot of misinformation flying around for the day or two after that hurt different people of the organization, and I thought was probably the worst aspect of how that whole thing went down. And I think everybody shared a lot of regret in that circumstance, which might be something, Udoka hits on tonight as well. It's going to be interesting to listen, Josue. We're going to be there 5:30. Ime will speak to the media in Boston for the first time since his suspension. Back with the Rockets tonight, who come in losing 6-10 on a back-to-back 6-game and 9 nights. So a very difficult circumstance for them to come into this game. I think Dylan Brooks is still uncertain. He's missed some time here. Tari Eason as well, dealing with a lower leg injury.
Man,
so those guys are up in there.
10-0 run saved that game last night. Van Fleet scoring 8 of those points, 8 of 10. Man, it was, they pretty much were battling all game, and then
that team fights though. I mean, they were the 29th ranked defense last year, and they are 6th under Ime here, which is again a masterful coach. The guy can coach, Josue,
incredible.
And that's why I think everybody is still a little bummed that it went the way it did here today. And that's going to be on display in the crowd tonight. It's going to be an interesting night. Of course, the Saturday night crowd at the Garden. Good game on tap, I'm sure. Celtics fully healthy coming in. And again, we'll have all the coverage. Celtics CLNS, Celtics All Access. We might react right after Ime speaks. Who knows? So stay tuned for all of that there. CLNS Media will have Udoka's comments. I'm not sure live, but very quickly after he speaks, his presser in full will be up on CLNS Media. So subscribe there as well. Looking forward to it, Josue. I'll see you in a couple hours.